Have you ever wondered if a single moment, a single week in the vast expanse of human history, could change the course of our world forever? What if I told you that such a moment happened in the year 1258, in a city that was then the very center of civilization? A historian who witnessed the event wrote that the river running through this great city turned black from the ink of countless books thrown into its waters and then red from the blood of the scholars who had written them. This is not just a story. It is a memory etched into the fabric of time, a pivotal point where one world ended and another, very different one, began. It's a tale of immense loss, but also one that holds profound lessons for us today, living centuries later. This event is the Siege of Baghdad. It's a story about a clash of two worlds so fundamentally different they might as well have been from separate planets. On one side, you had a city that was a beacon of knowledge, a place where science, philosophy, and art flourished in a golden age. On the other, you had an unstoppable force of nature, an empire forged in the harsh, windswept plains of Central Asia, driven by a destiny to conquer. The collision of these two forces would not just level buildings, it would shatter an entire era of human thought and progress, leaving a void that would take centuries to fill. Before the storm arrived, Baghdad was more than just a city. It was an idea made real. Founded in the 8th century, it was designed to be the circular heart of a thriving empire. Picture it not as a city of sand and stone, but as a bustling global metropolis, much like a modern-day New York or London, but with a magic all its own. Its streets were a kaleidoscope of humanity, filled with merchants selling silks from China, spices from India, and amber from the north. Scholars, poets, and musicians from different cultures and faiths walked these same streets, their minds buzzing with new ideas. This was the epicenter of the Islamic Golden Age, a period of unparalleled scientific, cultural, and economic flourishing. While much of Europe was navigating the so-called Dark Ages, Baghdad was a city of light. Its astronomers were mapping the stars with incredible precision. Its mathematicians were developing algebra, and its physicians were writing medical encyclopedias. At the very core of this intellectual powerhouse was a legendary institution known as the House of Wisdom. Think of it as the greatest library and university the world had ever seen. Scholars here took the forgotten works of ancient Greece and translated them into Arabic. By doing so, they built a bridge of wisdom that would later spark the European Renaissance. This was the brilliant, shining jewel that stood unknowingly in the path of an unstoppable force. Now let us turn our gaze to the east, to the vast, unforgiving grasslands of the Asian steppes. From this immense landscape emerged the Mongols. Under the leadership of Genghis Khan, they were more than just a tribe. They were a nation forged in hardship and discipline. Imagine a people whose lives were spent on horseback, who could read the land and the sky like a book, and who were united by a singular vision of conquest. They were masters of strategy and psychological warfare, moving with a speed and coordination that left established empires utterly bewildered. The Mongol Empire was the antithesis of Baghdad's settled urban civilization. Where Baghdad was a center of scholarship, the Mongols were a mobile nation. Their strength came from their unparalleled cavalry, their composite bows, and their unwavering loyalty to their leader. After Genghis Khan, the empire expanded until it became the largest contiguous land empire in history, stretching from the Pacific to Europe. The force that marched on Baghdad was led by Hulagu Khan, a grandson of Genghis Khan, tasked with expanding the empire into the Middle East. Hulagu's army was a sophisticated, multi-ethnic military machine, including skilled Chinese engineers who were masters of siege warfare. Their advance was relentless, and they sent envoys with a clear ultimatum: submit or be destroyed. In the winter of 1258, the storm finally broke. Hulagu Khan's massive army arrived at the gates of Baghdad. The city, which had stood for 5 centuries, was now surrounded. Hulagu sent his final demand: surrender and come before him. The Caliph, caught between pride, poor advice, and fatal underestimation of his enemy, refused. He believed the city's formidable walls would hold and that the Islamic world would rush to his aid. He was wrong on both counts. The siege began in earnest. Hulagu's engineers quickly constructed a palisade and ditch around the entire city, trapping everyone inside. Then they unleashed a terrifying barrage. Massive trebuchets hurled enormous rocks day and night, the constant thudding a psychological weapon. They used gunpowder-based weapons, unfamiliar to the defenders, creating explosions that sowed panic and confusion. The defenders fought back bravely, but they were hopelessly outmatched by the Mongols' technology and relentless assault. Within 2 weeks, the inevitable happened. The Mongols breached the eastern wall. A section crumbled under the ceaseless assault. Hulagu's forces poured into the city like a flood through a broken dam. The defense collapsed, and the fate of the city was sealed. The caliph finally surrendered, hoping to negotiate for his people's lives. He and his sons went to Hulagu's camp, but it was far too late. The Mongol custom was clear. Resistance meant retribution. The gates were thrown open, and a terrible destruction was unleashed. What followed was a cataclysm of cultural destruction unlike almost any other in history. The week-long sack was the targeted eradication of a civilization's soul. Palaces, mosques, hospitals, and grand residences that had taken centuries to build were looted and burned to the ground. The physical destruction was immense, but the greatest tragedy was not the loss of buildings, but the loss of the knowledge they contained. The heart of this tragedy was the destruction of the House of Wisdom and the city's other great libraries. Countless thousands of priceless manuscripts on medicine, astronomy, mathematics, philosophy, poetry, and history were systematically destroyed. Survivors told of soldiers using book covers for sandals. The rest were thrown into the Tigris River, forming a bridge of paper and ink. So many books were discarded that the river ran black from dissolved ink for days. Imagine a fire that burns the internet. Imagine every server, every database, every digital record of our collective knowledge being wiped out. That is the scale of loss that occurred. We will never know what scientific discoveries were lost, what philosophical arguments were silenced, what medical cures or beautiful poems were erased. It was a cultural lobotomy for the entire region, creating a vacuum of knowledge, a deep wound in the intellectual continuity of human history. The human cost was equally staggering. Scholars, poets, scientists, and artisans, the very people who had made Baghdad the center of the world, were lost. The city's population was decimated. The intricate canal network was destroyed, turning fertile plains into barren swampland for centuries. You might be thinking, this happened long ago. Why does a 13th century story matter in our world of smartphones and space travel? The reason is that the echoes of Baghdad's fall are still shaping our world in ways we might not realize. Before 1258, the heart of innovation was in the Islamic world. After the siege, that center began drifting towards Europe. Think of it like a relay race. For centuries, Baghdad's scholars carried the baton of knowledge. When that baton was dropped, progress stalled. The European Renaissance was sparked by the very texts Baghdad had saved. But one must wonder, how much further might we be if that engine had never been destroyed? The story serves as a powerful warning about the fragility of civilization. Centers of knowledge, whether libraries or digital servers, are vulnerable. Progress is not inevitable. It requires constant nurturing and a society that values open inquiry and wisdom preservation. The siege reshaped the Middle East forever, ending the Abbasid Caliphate and creating centuries of instability whose effects we still see today. Understanding this deep history helps us make sense of the modern world, reminding us that current events are rooted in historical traumas from long ago. The past is never truly past. It flows beneath the surface of the present like an underground current. So we come to the end of our journey, a story that began in a city of light and ended in a river of ink. The fall of Baghdad was more than military conquest. It was a turning point for humanity, when a brilliant flame of knowledge was nearly extinguished. But this story is also a testament to human resilience. Though the House of Wisdom was destroyed, the knowledge it shared could not be entirely erased. Like seeds scattered by the wind, the ideas nurtured in Baghdad had traveled to other parts of the world and would eventually blossom into new eras of discovery. We live in an age of unprecedented access to information. Our houses of wisdom are digital, vast, and seemingly infinite. But are we truly valuing it? Are we using this inheritance to build bridges of understanding, or allowing new forms of division and ignorance to threaten it? The story of Baghdad is not just about the past. It is a mirror reflecting our own responsibilities in the present. The legacy is a cautionary tale written in dust, but also a hopeful one, written in the stars that its astronomers once mapped. It asks us to be guardians of our own age, to cherish our libraries, protect our artists and scientists, and ensure our rivers run clear with curiosity. What will future historians write about our era? Will they say we learned from the past or were doomed to repeat its tragedies? The story is now ours to continue. What will our chapter say?